Hope we're there. No, go in this
Hold
way.
on, hold on.
There we go.
Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am Taylor Andre. Waking up with Taylor Andre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day that we link up, but about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. We have Gwen Samuel on the line, and she is going to tell us about this amazing. What happened today?
Well, I can tell you about the power of everyday citizens. We had a billionaire, not knocking him because he's a billionaire. He gave $100 million to Connecticut. We had to match it with $100 million of tax dollars. So I'm like, oh, that's fair. Until they said, well, we can spend your money and access your children any way we want in secret. Up breaks. Wrong answer. And you know who gave this man this power? Our legislators. They circumvented their governing authority and said, yeah, go ahead into Connecticut schools and do what you want with our children in secret. I don't underestimate the power of parents and taxpayers and voters. Okay. This happened in 2019. I started everyday mom started to repeal the secret deal because the intent I do with in all fairness, I believe the intent of the entity was good. It wanted to help public school children, those most marginalized. The problem is you don't do anything with other people's children in secret. I don't care who you are. So we fought that. And the day today, I got a call from a reporter like 10:30, 10:49. The governor was going at 11 o'clock to announce the disbandment of this secret entity. And so I say that to all your listeners and those in social media land. Never, as Margaret Mead said, never underestimate the power of a small group of committed individuals. I'm paraphrasing for change. And that's why this is a perfect time to be with Tayla. Tayla, is it Andre? Is that how you say your last
Andre,
name?
yes.
Andre?
Yes.
I
Yes.
am. This is like the best call of the day to just bring the power of parents and to life. And so I'm happy to be here this afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gwen. So, for those who don't know, Gwen is the founder of Connecticut's.
Parents
I don't
Union.
want to.
Nope, the
Yes,
Connecticut
Parent
Parents Union.
Union, Connecticut Parent Union, the power through the collective voice of parents. And
That's it.
so, I just want to first say that Gwen and I connected about a year ago because Massachusetts doesn't have a parent union as a state. The bus drivers have a union, the teachers have a union, even the janitors have a union, but yet there's no union to unite parents. And so Gwen is teaching everybody how to run a parent union. And so, though I don't know if I'm ready for that type of commitment, Gwen, like it's a lot, but I definitely want to discuss with our parents that are watching, like how can we as parents unite, especially during these times when the educators are not, and not to knock educators and all of their hard
Mhm.
work and their dedication to our children, but
Yes.
the legislator is the one making the decision, enforcing the hands of educators that don't want to necessarily do these things that they're being told to do. And so it is our job as parents to say, listen, I'm opting out. My kids ended the school year back in March. Like for my house and my household, that's how we conducted ourselves. School ended when they couldn't go to school and be students anymore. And so I know personally for my children, this has been a very difficult um, transition. And because it's been difficult, I opted out. And like for parents going through this that don't, adults don't even know what they're doing, Gwen, let alone the children,
You got that
how
right.
can we as parents, you know, what can we do to unite here in Massachusetts? What have you done in Connecticut? And how I want to learn everything we possibly can from you.
So the beauty of number one, for the great state of Massachusetts, you have great committed parents like you. Um, I happen to meet a young lady, I know at times people say she's controversial. Like you have a Carrie Rodriguez, they just started. formed a national parents union. They've been connecting with parents across the country. So I'm saying shout out to everyone in their individual lanes or collective lanes who are on the ground in Massachusetts. I will say that. But number two, if we think about unions for a second, every union member has a union rep, right? Whether you're a teachers union, whether you are a union for construction, whatever, all these unions, I'm still learning about them. But I will say, as parents, we are our child's rep. So you think of it as that. In other words, they got protections to protect their members. We, as parents and guardians of children, we must represent what's best for our children first and foremost, regardless of politics, regardless of how we feel. We have a legal obligation, we have a moral obligation, and if you get to the bottom line, we just must do right as adults for children, because at the end of the day, especially under the age of your going into your transitioning into your high school years or your later high school years, that they are trusting us as adults to not just make informed decisions, but responsible decisions on their behalf. So this is beyond politics, this is beyond rhetoric, this is beyond school model. At the end of the day, whatever you decide for your parents, it should come from a place, of course, we come from a place of love, right? That unconditional love, right? But then among that, then if you expand on that, then it comes to making sure that when you're making decisions for your children, they are informed based on what you know about your child. And I tell people all the time, in my state, my lawmakers will tell you, my baby don't start their day in your classroom. They come from a home, or it could be a shelter, or it could be in foster care or adoptive care, but whatever that home life is, it still doesn't begin in the classroom. So you cannot, I say that to say, you don't get to circumvent me. Like, never. And when you try to circumvent me, you're about to have a problem, because it's my child and my choice. Even if it falls into the weed, that's your politics. My baby is not a pawn. My baby is a little human being who is trying to grow up to be a productive adult. But to do so, that means I must be on my game. I am a tough love parent advocate because people were tough love with me being a young mom. I had my first two children at 24 and 26. Some say, well, you were grown. Oh, no, I was a baby, right? To me, it was. And so to bring another child into life, to bring into the world, my mother had to help me. I wasn't really mature at 24. But am I grateful? Absolutely. So I say that to say, whatever stage in life you are a guardian or a parent, you have a responsibility that is non negotiable. And what is non negotiable is to ensuring the safety, the education, and the overall well being of children. And that is actually, so I'll pause there if you have any questions. But it
Mm-mm.
was a fight. Girl, I don't play. And to every parent out there, you don't need to play either. You are your child's union rep. So when they pull theirs out, when you go to one of these PPTs or IEPs, I tell you, number one, never go alone. If you decide to put your children back in the system, during this pandemic, I'm hearing a lot about parents, more and more parents exploring schooling at home. Now, people say, oh, they're homeschooling. Oh, no, I was terrible at homeschooling. I just want you to know this. My daughter manipulated me. So I would have to find a homeschool network. So also know your strengths, right? Know what you could be good at and work with other folks. But there are a lot of decisions that are going to have hard decisions, because parents during this pandemic, it forced us to have to slow down because we were stopped, right? Stay home, stay safe. We heard horror stories from our children of what they have to deal with. And so we have to take responsibility for being too busy to be on our game. Now, does that mean you didn't love your child because you were busy? No. Some people have to work one job, two jobs. Some people are in domestic violence situations, right? Life is happening. But regardless of what is happening in your life, you still have an obligation to your child. And that could mean developing extended families, right? That could mean looking at extended supports, because it doesn't absolve you from your responsibility to your baby. Because one thing I believe, I talked to my kids, and my daughter told me this, and she is now 18. I pulled her in and out of school so much I felt like I failed her, because number one, I had three boys, all focused on the boys. Here you have this black girl trying to fit in a society where you need to have a certain look about you. She has short natural hair. She's been teased about that. She's been bullied. She's been told to kill herself. We're talking middle school and elementary. These are the things we hear. And I thought I was a great advocate. I'm checking in, I'm going in, I'm talking to principals, right? But think about it. The law of compulsory, right? Every decision we are forced to make. Let us be clear. We don't volunteer to send our children to some of these schools. We are bound by law through compulsory education. And that is a hard pill to swallow. When puts my child's, the law puts itself over the safety and well being of my child. Because compulsory means you are forced, regardless of your situation. That is why I am a strong opponent of educational freedom. And I don't co-sign, whatever you do for your children, we must make sure that it is safe and quality. But I wasn't
Mhm.
one for homeschooling. So I called it schooling at home. My daughters, like I said, they manipulated me. And then I started talking with other parents, learning strategies. And I'll tell you some of the turning points. I've had child welfare call on me many a time. So I should have stock in this state agency because I knew my responsibility, even when I was wrong, but I still knew my responsibility was to protect my children at all costs. And I don't mind being held accountable as long as you're prepared to be held accountable too. When I go to,
So let's rewind.
okay,
So let's rewind. You're a parent and you're fed up. What drove you to create the Connecticut Parent Union?
I will tell you a 2 second story. They ain't 2 seconds, but about a minute. So I remember in 2010, in 2009 and 10, we had the first black president, right? And during the time when Barack, they were starting to talk about achievement gaps. I never understood achievement gaps because my work didn't start here. I still care about pedestrian safety for children. So in my city, I developed the first Meriden Kids Walk Safe because we had kids walking across highway ramps at 1,000 cars an hour with semi trucks. Who can focus on the classroom? You got to get to the classroom first. So that's actually how I started in advocacy. I developed my first safe routes to school. And so we got laws passed. And how it fell in my lap is in California. There was a law called a parent trigger back in January of 2010. I still have the original email. And it was telling us how parents in California were able to vote. We're talking traditional schools. That if a school was systemically failing for so many years, they had the power to sign a petition. And if 51% of the parents of that individual school voted to change it, they had the power, legal power to do so. And so I tell people that doesn't mean automatically jump to charters. Some schools don't have a library, something as simple as a library. You might have to advocate so your baby can have access to a library, to books, right? So everything doesn't
So
have to
in
be
that
controlled.
law, I'm sorry. So in that law, it for the parents, if the parents of the school vote 51% or more, they can change that school to what? What is it
Right.
exactly in
So there was a
California
list
law
of
that
things.
the parents?
Right. So there was a list of things. Well, in Connecticut, I should say there was a list of schools. I'm kind of vague on some of their details, but like I said, they could change it to a charter. They could change it to a magnet. They had options, or they could keep the school they're saying, just vote for certain things to improve it. So there was freedom there, but the law was attacked so bad. So, but what I did in Connecticut when I saw it, I said, oh, that would help black parents. Because I'm sure they call us lazy. They blame us for everything. Global warming. They blame poor parents for everything. So I'm like, let's bring this law to Connecticut. They would love parents. Houston, I was very wrong, Miss Taylor. They attacked us like we had stole something from somebody's house. They were saying parents trying to run the asylum. We're not having no trigger law. That's too violent. Parents are not capable of making a decision. Oh, that's not, you're not about to tell me about what's good. You're just not going to do it. So we fought. It was the first time in Connecticut history where we organized close to 1,000 parents. And we weren't even Connecticut Parents Union then. I was called the State of Black Connecticut because it was focused on the black community during the recession. And so we introduced the law. Our Black and Puerto Rican caucus joined us. Heck, we even had charter folk was like, your new law is taking over our issue. You know, I'm like, well, you do you. Parents got to do what they need to do. So we kept it moving. And ladies and gentlemen, it was watered down, but I called it a foot in the door. We got our first parent empowerment law in Connecticut's history in 2010. The governor, it was a Republican governor at that. She signed it into law, and we had our first parent empowerment law, which meant in every school, we had over 300 what was deemed by the state significantly failing schools. Every one of those schools had to have a school governance council with like several members, but majority of the members were parents. You had to have two from the community, like three parents, two from the community, like two teachers, whatever the composition was. And the principal was like a silent person because he's the head of the school. So we had it, and the unions came after. It was terrible. The law kept getting watered down. They tried to remove it. And I told parents, the beauty about having the law is it opened the door for us to amend, improve. And so that's how we got the first law. But I will tell you, that is how I started the Parents Union in January 14th of 2011, because I vowed that the unions will never be able to call us animals and call us out our God-given names again. And since you
Mm.
protect yours, we got to protect ours. And so that's how it was formed. And it was tough. We had no funding. We had parent groups in the state, the PTO. None of these people wanted to join us. We did this on our own. It's too controversial. Well, I got too many stretch marks for you to tell me what I'm going to do with my baby. So I don't know. Excuse me, world. It is what it is. Welcome to childbirth. You're not coming for mine without a fight. And you're not coming for my rights. Because if I don't do right, Taylor, they're going to send the police, social workers. They have weaponized child welfare. And you'll be the first one. Educational neglect. No, it's neglect by you telling me what I can't do to protect my baby. That's the crime.
Mm.
And so, by then, I knew DCF was going to be every other day on my door. So every time they come to my house and they say, ma'am, we got a complaint that you haven't sent your child to school. I said, oh, the school that you can't keep safe, that school? Well, how about this? They said, we need to come to your house. You know, my comment used to always be, I'll meet you at the courthouse. That's about the only house you're going to meet me at. And so, but I'm telling you, it wasn't easy. I'm smiling now, but I used to cry many of those days. I'm afraid they can take my children. Jeez, I'm going to have to move out the state. But you're not coming for mine like that. And parents, get
So
my support.
what did you do? So for the parents that are, and I'm considering homeschooling, just considering it because them being home this entire time has drove me crazy, and I'm not a great educator.
But you learn
I
more
can put
about your
information in
children.
front of you. Yes, I did a lot more than I was ready for. But
I'm
um,
telling you.
what steps can a parent take, or what steps did you take in the beginning when you did have to fight and we want to come to your house now, meet me at the courthouse? Like, how'd you do that?
That was a process. So if I tell, I would be remiss not to tell you. If you're afraid, you should be, because we have sanctioned state agencies that do have the power to trump up charges, to remove your children. You are absolutely a right to be afraid. So I'm not telling you I was not afraid. But what I will tell you is, in the middle of the night when your baby has a stomach ache, when your baby runs a fever, when they're not feeling well, they don't say, "Oh, can you go get my principal? Can you go get my teacher?" No, they're calling their mommy and daddy. So that means in their eyes, you are their hero. You are going to protect them. You are going to keep them safe. You are going to ensure they have what they need so they can grow up to be like their hero. And that hero being you. So I'm never going to minimize what the fight is. It is a fight because every day there are rules and regulations and policy that work to strip you of your right, of your natural right. For those who believe in God, as your God given right to be that parent, that guardian to your child. And that's a dangerous place to be in. when someone tells you what you can and cannot do with your child, but it was you who looked in those babies' eyes when they were born. It was you who labored those pains, those labor of love that we say we never want to do again, but we do it again and we have another child, right? So there has to be, so first thing I would say to parents, you have to come to grips with self. You have to come to grips with who you are. What is the role you play? Because without being clear, you'll let anybody in the systems do whatever they want to your children. And they're not their children to do so. You okay, Miss Taylor?
No, because I'm thinking about all of the parents that have had their children removed out of the household, whether it was for like educational or medical or just like what you said, like trumped up charges to take kids away.
Yeah,
And I'm
real.
I'm thinking about how many parents have had their children taken away from them trying to do right by their kids.
Yeah.
And the bureaucracy and the red tape and the policies that we, the people, have allowed politicians to put in place to minimize
Keyword.
our power.
Right. Keyword is
Um,
allowed. You're right. And again, I will say the Gwen you see today, if you Google me, some I don't even recognize that Gwen on some of these Google images. I'm like, what? I've been small, tall, stressed, red eyes, blue eyes. Every day I give up. Every day I throw in the towel. But one thing I can say how I was blessed to be who I am is I was determined. I didn't like what I was seeing. I never knew it. So think about it. I have four children. I have one in the military. I have a daughter who again had to pull out from school. She's been bounced about. She's lost the the fun, if you will, the things that people attract them to schools. Because I had to focus on her education and she lost contact with peers, the people who she grew up with through her age, all because I wanted her to be safe. And that wasn't
mm,
easy. But part of this is attending. I attended so many I look at my badges. I got about hundreds of parent conferences from like 2010. I've traveled the country and asking every time I saw a workshop or a training, can I go? And some of these workshops had price tags, and I was never afraid to say, look, I don't have any money. But this could really help me to help other people and to help myself. Can I go? Right. And so part of this is moving out of your comfort zone to do whatever it takes for you to become more educated about the process. And it's not easy because you're trying to keep a roof over your head. When I started
hmm
Connecticut Parents Union, we're still all volunteer. Not that I want to be. I've never had a paycheck from Connecticut Parents Union because it seems like every time I applied for funding, it came with some strings attached. I don't mind checks and
mm,
balances. Let me be very clear. I'm all about accountability and checks and balances. But you're not going to tell me what you believe is best for me and you never walked in my shoes. Now, if you want to listen to me and work with me to become empowered, that's why this whole word, I don't say parental involvement because that has such a traditional tone. The status quo will use that. Your system will say, oh, they're involved. It's beyond that, right? So I stick to the word parent engagement. But I'm also moving away from hearing, oh, we empower parents. No, you really don't give me power because it's not yours to give. But you help
mm,
parents become in power. So I work to move parents from being into that flavor of the month term empowered. Because they'll say that in a minute. My parents are empowered. Well, who just made that decision about my child? You did. That don't feel like power to me. Now, empower means I can have the discussion with you about my child, and we can come up to a median. But let me be very clear on the line that I will draw. And so, because if you don't include your values and the principles of your home, you'll have some of the things I heard that was happening in Massachusetts. I think it's Massachusetts or Rhode Island. I think it was Rhode Island, where there's a
it's
law
by
about sexual
Massachusetts.
abuse. About sexual abuse. And they say they sexual abuse. They say if your child is 16, I think it's Rhode Island. If your child is 16, a teacher can legally not be arrested for having sex with your child. I tried to tell my children's father that what's happening in Massachusetts. I couldn't even wrap my head about that. See, you go in the black community with some foolishness like that, you about to have a problem. And then at the age of 14, they can fondle your child as long as they don't penetrate. These are state laws, ladies and gentlemen, for your baby. So when people tell me, Miss Gwen, parents will tell you in Connecticut, if you call me, you better be prepared to tell me what you've done first. I work with you. I don't work for you. Because if you don't take ownership for your baby, who gonna do it? And so we have to be tough love with one another. That doesn't mean you're being judgmental, right? But oh, well, the parents will be upset. Well, be upset for what? If the roof is leaking and mold is coming through and you don't want to tell them because they're going to be wondering what you did, you still have an obligation to tell them so people can make informed decisions. I might not want to send my child. I have severe asthma that could take their life. And you got something happening in the school that could put my child's life at risk, that could potentially kill my child, and you think you can keep secrets from me? Oh, we're not about to do that. So that's what I'm saying. It's like so again, I know we're short for time, but part of it is I in 2010. I'll back up for a second. I and a professor, he helped me develop something called the K3. I now call it the K4 curriculum. The K3 curriculum was know your child, know your school, know your community. And a few years ago, I updated know yourself. Because as parents, it is tough raising children. If you found that gold manual for parenting, by all means, send it to me. I haven't gotten it yet. But if you don't have it, right, you have to know yourself. Know where you are. If you're going through something now, it's nothing wrong with making a support system for you. And it's hard to trust. You're right. But imagine if you don't make that plan. You open the door for someone to call you a non-caring mama. Need no home training for your kids. These parents are terrible. And it could be is that every night you closing the door and you in a domestic violent relationship and you're trying to keep that shielded from your children, trying to focus. That's real. Suicide has increased for our children, especially children of color. And you know why? Because they're navigating lanes that adults are supposed to be doing, being more responsible in. And it's not fair. And I will always say to parents, if you don't handle your business, your kids are going to grow up to hate you. And that's a hard thing to say to a parent because that child will remember you knew what that school was doing and you did nothing. Now, some of you will say, well, I did. I went to the school. I spoke for him, but we still sent them back there. And then the child become, what do you do with them then? Right? If you can't send them there, it's hurting you. You don't have options. Then you fight for what you want for your child, and it's not easy. So that's where the collectiveness, right? That's why I say the collective voice of parents. Because parents' rights, parents, I call it, people are stripping us of our parents' rights to be responsible. That's what I say. We are legally responsible. And here's the double-edged sword. They'll tell you, oh, you can't do this and do that for the child. But the very thing they tell you can't do or shouldn't do is the thing that they will charge you for educational neglect for. That's why on my Facebook page says question everything. My mama know. And she, and God bless her soul. She was a fireman. She was the first black firefighter in my city. She's in retirement now. And she would never let me talk about the unions because from her history, for her growing up as a child, the unions were very instrumental in the black movement, right? For fighting for rights. But I've also heard some crazy things then too. So I can't talk to my family about the union. She puts me out every day. If you talk about when you got to go, no problem. Matter of fact, my sneakers are by the door. But I tell her this. I say to my mom, look, God bless that you were a great firefighter. But I would hate to know that my union, your union would protect you if you was a sorry one. Because I would get burned up anyway. So I need you, man, to understand. Trust me. You're talking about they are so through with me. I'm gonna have to change my name and move to Massachusetts, right by you, Miss Taylor. But, right, because I don't play when it comes to children, and I'm very clear. At the end of the day, as adults, we have again a legal, a moral responsibility and obligation to protect children, regardless of the politics, regardless of party affiliation. Those babies don't say, oh, my mommy, the Democrat. Oh, my mommy, the Republican. They don't say that. They say, my mom, my dad, my nana, my grandma, my older brother, my siblings. They don't get all into that political stuff. It's us who have to weed through that just to try to protect their rights. So my bottom line is Don't start nothing, won't be nothing with children. And I don't negotiate when it comes to the safety and education of children. Now, does that mean I cry every night? Yes, but it's not negotiable.
So how for parents that maybe are a part of like their school parent conference, whatever, once a month, once a week, how can parents unite? Like, Gwen, you and I have fundamental differences. You
Mm-hmm.
believe that the teachers should be able to like scold my child in public. And I'm like, you don't need to scold my, like, how can parents unite when we have totally different ideologies, different religions, different belief systems? What happens in my house is different from what happens in your house. How can parents unite on something that many don't even agree on?
Right. The problem is we focus on what we don't agree on. But what do we agree on? We believe that all children are entitled to a safe, nurturing, home life, right? To be safe, to be free from abuse and neglect. Whether that's home, whether that's school, or whether that's community. So we build on what we have consensus about. That's why with every meeting you do, people think you could just jump in. When I jumped in the Connecticut Parents Union, it wasn't just all hoopla and this, we're going to do this. Our first thing out the gate was just saying we exist. There are parents with like mine who love their children. That didn't need to be political. I had more people across aisle, Republicans didn't even know it, unaffiliated liberals, like people who are extreme. Some things they want to get me to, jump on bandwagon, but we all had one thing in agreement of: no child should have to go through some of the things they are experiencing, whether in our communities or in schools. So once you build that consensus, your collectiveness of voice will differ by issue, right? So for instance, when people never really knew, they think I speak about school choice now more. In the beginning, I thought charters were a cult. Okay, I thought it was a cult. I didn't go to my first event for charters really to later years because I don't like people to say, because then the messaging was, we're better than everybody else. Well, who are you? You're playing God. I won't be messing nowhere near you, right? But then as I started to see some of the things that were happening in my schools in Connecticut, racial quotas, the sexual trauma, the bullying, which is happening across the country, right? Some schools just didn't meet the needs of the child. And it had no reflection on the model. It was just destructive. That's why this whole one size fits all is a true statement. It's not a sound bite. People are good for sound bites. Hold on 1 second, because I thought I had plugged this computer into the wall and it just said low battery. I'm 2 seconds. I'm going to duck down. Literally count 3 seconds.
So for those who don't know, we're talking to Gwen Samuel. She's out of Connecticut. She founded the Connecticut Parent Union. And we just like, with the climate that we're currently in, COVID-19, the schools don't know what they're doing. Everybody's complaining about the Boston School Board. We have absolutely no control over that. It's governed by the mayor, and so our voice as parents does not matter. And it's time for us to make those decisions. Would
Oh,
things be
absolutely.
differently here in Boston if we put our foot down and say, listen, like, the school committee needs to be us. That doesn't need to, like, the mayor don't even have kids. Like,
See?
city
See?
councilors, like, it needs to be us, the parents, that make the decisions on who's going to govern these dollars, who's going to govern these laws, the policies. And I just really wanted to take, like, Gwen has a Connecticut Parent Union. How do we here in the state of Massachusetts, even though we have C-Plan, the Collaborative Parent Leadership Action Network, that was founded by Julia Mahia, who is now city councilor at large, but we are ran by two co-managers, shout out to Evilise and Sharita, and I love everything that C-Plan does. We've lost, and by lost, that we turn down money. We turned down
Yeah.
dollars because it didn't make sense. We've turned down money because they wanted, we'll give you this money, but in return, we need you to do X, Y, Z. That's
Hello.
we're not here for you. We're here
Exactly.
for the children. and we're doing what's right for the children. And so there have been many a dollars that didn't make sense, and so we turned it down. And I know some people, controversial or not, are picking up those dollars even when it means putting down our kids. And
Right.
so,
See, that's why we even look. I've learned one thing. I said I think the beauty didn't mean it wasn't easy. My family was very upset that like, why you don't have funding? How you doing this thing? People thought like we had like full paychecks. They said you get up every morning, you're checking in, you're doing appointments, and you're doing this. Oh, trust me, I've the sacrifice and again, there are many parents, not just me, right, who are
mhm,
sacrificing so much because they know it's the right thing to do. It's not expedient, it's not safe, it's not political, but it's just the right thing to do. So the first thing we have to
mhm,
remember, if we think about COVID right now, so if we think about a plan, number one, we have to help parents understand. Now they know they're at stay at home. They know that, now we're schooling at home. I don't even call it homeschooling. Many of us are just schooling at home. We're not doing the formal structure, right? And those kids know it too. Oh, we're not homeschooled. Trust me. I just got them watching the Avatar. I'm not, I'm sleeping on my phone.
exactly,
Mommy, I fell
exactly.
asleep on the couch. She thought she was helping me. And you telling your mom, that was the wrong answer to my math problem. Okay? We're dealing with some stuff. It's all right. We went through, but at the same time, what we all have in common is schools across the country have closed. And so
Mhm,
it's not about just school closure, reopening Connecticut. We have to help parents and each other understand that we are about to embark on new norms. So the things we thought is going to happen, things will not be the same again. Because number one, I call it, my hashtag is pandemic politics. I call it because pandemic politics is coming into play. It's an election year,
mm,
not just for presidents, but for our state folk,
yeah,
right? So there
yep.
are a lot of moving parts who are taking advantage of this deadly pandemic to push their pet peeves, their hidden agendas. So we have to be clear with that. So we have to be clear about new norms and the new economy. Because all this money and stimulus dollars, you say, oh, I just got a check in the mail from Uncle Sam. I'm on my way. Well, that's coming from somewhere. Didn't come out the air.
No such
And,
thing as a free lunch.
and there's no such thing as the money tree. Okay? That's coming out of your pockets one way or the other. So we have to be so clear about those two things because then we won't be expecting things to be norm. So if things don't happen like we thought it happened, you're like, well, my school didn't. Well, nobody's school did. Right. And so the question becomes I'm telling parents to make contingency plans. And I'll give you an example. I had people calling me that were on fixed income, right? And they were waiting for their, food stamp cards and things like that because the government was like shut down. I didn't get it in the mail. I have to eat. So I said, welcome to contingency plans. You have children. If you don't feed them, even with a pandemic, you're going to have state sanctioned social service at your door. So I need you to think contingency. We get so focused on what people are supposed to do. The question is, you're still responsible for your baby. Is there a church? Are there family members? You need to think contingency. And that's going to have to happen with plans. I call them IEP squared, IEP for parents. Every parent should have an individualized education plan for themselves. What are you, as the guardian, going to do to ensure the educational and academic, and not just academic, the life success? Your kids are more than ABCs and one, two, threes. They're little human beings. We're full of emotions, full of fear, full of excitement. You have to take all of that into account. That's why I call it the know your child. Know your school. You have to know what you're about to send them back to. If you weren't happy before the pandemic, are you think you're going to be jumping for joy now? And now your kids have told you all the dirt of what happened. Miss Susie had a flask in the drawer. Just examples. She used to sleep with the newspaper. She used to put me in the closet. What do you mean she put you in the closet? Why didn't you tell me? Well, Mom, you're always on the computer. I tried to tell you, right? So there's guilt
Mm,
trip going
mm.
on during the pandemic. I know I had a whole bunch of guilt trips. Did I fail you, baby? What did I do? Sit your behind down, you know? And she's like, let me just tell you. So parents are saying, oh, my children aren't actual aliens. They're actually little human beings. So let me listen. I have no choice. The pandemic forced us to listen to our kids. So we have a lot of decisions to make because many do not want to send them back where they came from. Doesn't mean you didn't have a great teacher or two. We just happen to know that education is the largest political line item in anyone's budget. So the money is made when we put our children in the schools, even if they don't perform well. I call children the new cotton.
Mhm.
That's what it is. We're the new commodity. So I believe what is going to happen is those who have, this is just based on patterns that I'm seeing emerge in trends, at least in
Mhm.
Connecticut. They are going after our school choice options. We don't have many. Connecticut hates charters. They would burn itself down and give. Now, they don't like school choice. They believe, and trust me, we in a state that has racial quotas in our magnet schools that are public schools. That if a white child doesn't show up because of the quota, they will leave the seat empty before they put the next child on the waiting list. That's Connecticut. Connecticut has empty seats before they, if because they saying that black and brown kids can only learn with white students. Well, guess what? Every child can learn with a qualified, committed, caring educator. Has nothing to do unless you're going to tell me that by my child sitting next to a white student, some type of osmosis is going to be going happening. You know, so but if that's not how it's happening, then you sound a little crazy. And I'm the one to say that. Because all you can do is just you don't pay me. So you can't say, well, I'm taking my funding back. Well, you never gave me none. But I'll tell you this, I don't want it if it can't for you hurting children. And I've suffered. My family was too through. Even my ex-husband, I'm just being very transparent. He's like, Gwen, it's gonna take a toll on you. I'll be your friend, but I can't be in this world. So I'm telling you, there are sacrifices in this fight because education is so political. So what I will say, if I had to leave, like what is start, we can come up with 20 steps. But one thing we have to say, parents, you have to just own your reality, right? And pride, especially in communities of color. Sometimes we don't like to tell people we're going through things, right? Because we know that child welfare is sanctioned to hurt us. But I will tell you, your child is depending on you, whether you're a mom raising your children, dad, or two-parent household, or one-parent household, whatever it is. Your baby don't see anyone but you to keep them safe. So first thing, understand your strengths, own them, but also understand your things you struggle with. And if you're struggling with something, then you need to come up with a contingency plan to support children. And so I see who's that over there? Someone over your head.
Yeah, the big one, the 16-year-old.
Oh, okay. You look like I should be. Look, the way you're looking up, he must be tall. I don't want
He
to
is. He is the
stereotype.
big one.
Just tell him don't forget the senior citizens when he comes become famous. That's all I'm saying. From Connecticut.
Mhm.
See? Hi, from Connecticut.
they,
I hope.
they can't even.
How you doing? Oh, here's another
God.
heartbreaker. Oh, another heartbreaker in the world. Listen, young man, girls have germs. And so, and this is a favor. So look, take care of your mama. Don't let me have to come to Massachusetts. Hi, little one. We are here because of you. Oh, that's a little portrait going on right there. Young man, you better be supporting your
Take him
mama.
out.
Don't let me come to Massachusetts.
So, Gwen, so again, I want to thank you for your time. Um, Take him out. So I'm a parent, and I am definitely fed up. So my children's school does have like a PTA, like a parent involvement group. And for me personally, I feel like all of the parents drank a Kool-Aid and they all are like, yeah, like we have the greatest school ever and everything's fantastic. And this crazy lady over here wants to complain about stupid stuff. And it's just like I'm not okay with the excessive discipline. I'm not okay with the, you know, putting students down while lifting others up.
Right.
There's just a multitude of things. I'm not okay with the Teacher for America, the teachers coming in for 3 years, getting their stipend taken off of their student loans and then leaving. Like there's no consistency. Once upon a time, I remember being in school, and one of the teachers that my mom had was one of the teachers that I was assigned. And so it's like, when you come from a level of consistency and then your kids are just like thrown into, I'm a first year teacher, never even had, what is it? para teachers, the teachers that be in the classroom but don't really teach. Like, you've never even sat in a classroom with a professional before, and now all of a sudden you are teaching my 14-year-old. Like,
Wow.
you at 22 years old, you teaching my 14-year-old, and you have no life experience.
It's
None.
interesting. It's interesting that you say that because in Connecticut, well, for me, I developed something called the urban experience, right? Helping teachers transition into our communities. And so one of the entities I worked with was Teach for America. And I gotta admit, there were like mixed emotions with that. I mean, but for me, I've learned a lot of things I did like to see and things I did
Mhm.
not like to see. But the beauty I will say was, at least in Connecticut, there was like an open door policy. We got to meet them and know them. Did I say everyone agreed with them? Absolutely not. Politics come into play. So that's why I'm all about building relationships with educators, even if you disagree. Because I tell folks, whether you like it or not, you're sending your babies there. You better know who's engaging your child, right? And there are times like, I push back on parents who say, well, I had such a terrible experience. That's why I don't show up. Well, that is why you should show up. It's because of your terrible experience. So now you want your children to have a terrible experience? So like I said, there's a lot of give and take of tough conversation. I think what's happening is we're afraid to offend one another. Some schools say, like, I'm afraid of teachers. I said, well, I mean, with parents. Well, if you're afraid of teachers, then you can do me no good. Because if you are afraid of me, then I mean you won't try to talk to me. If you won't try to
Mm.
talk to me, then you got my baby in there. So we're gonna have to figure out a middle ground. When I have parents and they look at me with a side eye, but when I have these first meetings for the school year, they'll start out with, let me tell you what my expectations are. And they'll tell me what they want as an educator from the principal and what they want from my child, what they expect of me. And then when they think the meeting's over, oh, no, 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 no. Now let me tell you what I expect from you since we in this together. You can't say we in this together and you're going to just be a one-sided conversation. I expect you to love my child like your own, but if you can't, then think of it as a family member. And I don't think you out there hurting your family member. If you got a problem with my child, call me, because the one thing you might be wanting to punish him for is, like, I'll give you a prime example as we close. All right, I lost a son. He was 24 in a fatal car accident in 2016. So I fell off the grid. I didn't send my kids back to school. I didn't, because we were done. We were like lost. Do you know only one teacher reached out to us and says, it's not like, because what it is, it's not like my son to miss any school. Even though he was a class clown, he would show up. And only one teacher wanted to know. Out of all the classes from all the teachers they had, only one called me. And I had to give the phone to my child. I couldn't even, I was no good. And so I say that to say that is the importance of building relationships. Because if without that call, I was waiting for DCF to come on our door for educational neglect because we were gone for a minute. I was lost. I couldn't even be a parent to my other children. That's the real world, right? We're human. So I'm not telling us to pretend to be something we are not,
Mhm.
especially if you are a parent of color, right, with disparate treatment and disproportionality. But even transcends that, we love our kids. And so only one parent, not even the principal. Then when they found out, I didn't have to have no problem. But I say that to say, if we are forced to send them, then we must try to figure it out. And figuring it out is just knowing where we're sending them, and then also working to the point that we might have to consider homeschooling or other options. That's just the reality that we are in, especially with this new norm coming up. We might not like what's coming down this pathway, which I don't think we will. And they're going to exclude us from many of these conversations. So I'm telling, I encourage parents to put yourself in your child's space if you can, to say, I need to know what I'm sending you back into. And if these school
Mhm.
districts not having a conversation with you, then I guess you don't want my child back there. I'm going to just tell you that right now. And that is hard conversations to have because some of us are overwhelmed right now with this whole homeschool. But the reality is, if you don't do it, who's going to do it? Right. And again, I appreciate this podcast. We should be lifting up the Taylor Andre show. Do I tell you why? Because you are a trusted source. Right now, there's too much data out here. Oh, trust me, all these reports coming at me, I take them with a grain of salt. I almost want to put them up and see what dart sticks. That's the one I'm going to read, because they're trusting on the fact that we are not in the know, and we're blindly going to trust everything. So I say to you, continue as a mom with those beautiful, handsome young children in the picture. Right, smart. I'm sure they smart. I'm sure they give you a run for your money too. I saw the eyes. They're like, "My, oh yeah, we give her a run for our money." I seen it. But at the end of the day, they're the reason why those smiles, because they know you got them. And that's important for children to know, that no matter what the politics look like, no matter the fallout, I got you. So continue being this trusted source of information. I will join you back. I will share with you the memo of like when we first started in 2011. People think we just jumped right in. I had to do more. The first year was hand holding. The first year of Connecticut Parents Union wasn't a bunch of activities. It was just making sure we understood our responsibility as parents, encouraging us not to give up, not to throw in the towel, not to compromise. People think you're just going to rally, people are just going to rah, rah, we're just going to jump on out and be with our megaphones. We're not trusting right now. So I tell anyone, any parent group you are, remember you are dealing with human beings, not a soundbite, not a political cause, human beings who are struggling in a system that forces us by law to send our children to some of the most horrific, scary schools in the world. Doesn't mean you don't have great teachers, right? Doesn't mean that. But these laws are from the Horace Mann days, 1800 days, right? Trying to figure out how does that work for 21st century kids.
I know that's right.
So we got our work ahead of us.
That's probably one of my biggest complaints.
Right. But my sister, just know you're not in alone. I'd be like Wonder Woman. You call me, send the back signal up. I will be in Massachusetts. Okay? You send that little signal up. I'm like, grab my flip flops or slippers. And my kids know I heard my kids so many times. Mom, you got mismatched shoes on. I know I can't be late. This legislative session. I've had look, that's the laughter. You laugh about some of this stuff. But again, you're gonna have a lot of tears too. So again, I say to every parent, you're human. Teachers are human. We're dealing with human beings in these systems. And we have to remember that first. And then once we remember we're human, that means we make mistakes. But at the end of the day, in the beginning of the day, in the middle of the day, we must never, ever compromise when it comes to our children's safety, their overall education. There's education outside the classroom too, not just in those walls. And their overall well-being. And remember, your child's education doesn't start in the school; it starts with you.
Amen. So, last question before we wrap up is one of my biggest gripes about the school that my children attend, or just school in general, is curriculum and children learning things. Going back to Horace Mann, this is the 2020. For me, it's like even now, the school commissioner, the school the superintendent still like pushing for these children to be tested. Like, oh, we need these tests. We need to know where these children lie as far as the tests are concerned. They need to take the test. And for me, it's like during this pandemic, we are seeing what is essential, what is important,
Right.
what is necessary. And for me, I'm like, why are we not having a real conversation about what these children should be learning in an educational space when a pandemic can shut us all the way down? What skills are we setting them up for that are going to be useful if we collapse again?
And so with that question alone, that's why I'm saying we have to first define what education is. Because we're thinking it's just the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. Every day of our life is a learning experience. That's why they call it lifelong learning, right? We force kids, we're saying, oh, that kid doesn't care. He doesn't do well on tests, but he loves working with his hands. He loves to build things. So we don't think about technical or career and technical education, right? My kids, my whole house, even I'm that way. I'm a very visual learner. You can talk to you blue. If I can't see it and I can't apply it to me in real time, then you are just talking. And thank you for the free ticket, to attend your event. But other than that, I have to be able to take what I've learned and apply it. And most parents I work with, we're very visual people. So that's why I always go back to what I say. Know your child. Because I tell him, when my son was in elementary, he's in the military now. He loved cars. So he loved to tinker. So I say, look, you trying to make him read that about your trees. He don't care about that. I mean, we can figure out how to teach him spontaneous combustion and photosynthesis. But he loves to build. He loves to see things. So you're going to have to bring that and let me help you. I know my child. Let me help you
Mm-hmm.
bring your lesson to life. That's how you'll know if he learned it. I don't know if you're going to get that same answer on your standardized test with the bubble, but I can. But if you
Amen.
ask him to build that thing for you, your test can't capture that. So again, I have mixed feelings about it because it's like a catch 22. They put no child left behind, so no child will be left behind. Now we have all these
Mm-hmm.
testing where you no longer see a child, you see a bubble, right? So we and
Yeah.
then kids still fall through the crack. They fell through the crack before tests. They fall through the crack with tests. They fall through the crack.
Yeah.
No, and the only reason why they're not falling through the crack now because many of our kids are home now and we're paying more close attention. Now they might not be getting all of your lessons, but one thing they're getting is a loving environment to teach. So for me, I have very
Mm-hmm.
mixed feelings about tests, but I always tell people your babies are more than ABCs and one, two, threes. And the only time my daughter liked to test because they used to get coupons to go to McDonald's. And I'm like, well, if you don't give her a coupon to go to McDonald's for taking a good test, then you can just give her some of these coupons and just when she does well overall, there's more to her than your bubble. So
Yeah.
I get confused sometimes when I listen to some of our state's rationale on why we need something. So again, I have mixed feelings about tests, but for parents, remember your babies are more than bubbles. And you know that because they make
Mm.
you cry little bubbles of tears in the home life now. So, your kids are more than that. So, for me, it's all about just treating kids as human beings, not widgets, not pawns, not something that you have to check a box off. Because again,
Mm.
we have to come to that place where you'll say, I don't negotiate and I don't compromise when it comes to my baby's well-being. Now, if you got a problem with something, you better take it up with me first. You won't be badgering, dehumanizing my children, have all these unrealistic expectations. And then you're going to expect these kids who experienced the trauma of a pandemic to what? Just bounce back into your classroom days in September? I'm not even going to let my child be tormented like that. And neither should none of you. We work together on how we should be rolling out school plans. And if you think the plans put your baby at safe, you put your baby first and say you won't don't look for me for that first day. And we still gonna have a back to school celebration at home. How about that? Okay, everybody going. Anyway, I digress.
Thank you, Gwen, so much for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your hard work. Connecticut Parent Union, Gwen Samuel, I love you. I thank you. I appreciate you. We're definitely going to have you back so we can discuss this further and
Yes,
maybe
and we should think about working
August.
together on some things. I will say we should think about because we would love to be able to share plans. Like, what is your state doing? What is that? Because we're the New England region, right?
We ain't
And so
doing shit.
we in it. They want experts. Here you got it. Okay, parents.
Exactly.
On the move. We are not in power. We are in power when it comes to our baby. I can't tell you what to do with your house, but you sure not gonna tell me what to do with mine. Okay. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so much, Gwen.
bye bye. Now I gotta figure out how to hang up. Leave the studio? Oh,
I, yes, leave the studio, Gwen.
you can imagine
I
where I
am
would be
Taylor
on this
Andre. Waking up with Taylor Andre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day that we wake up. But about waking up the third eye with unorthodox conversations, leading to mental consciousness. That was Gwen Samuel of the Connecticut Parent Union. And I think she said it best, like parents, you don't compromise and you don't negotiate when it comes to these babies. And I think for far too long we have compromised and we have negotiated and we have let those in power take away our power when it comes to our babies and when it comes to policies and procedures and what we've accepted as our new norm. I think as far as COVID-19 is concerned, we're going to see a lot of changes when it comes to education, and it is your job to get in front of it all and say, listen, this is how I want my child's education to go. If you are interested in C-Plan, the Collaborative Parent Leadership Action Network, please head over to cplanma.org. I am Taylor Andre. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. If you know anybody looking to buy or sell real estate in New England or Georgia, or anybody in the United States that needs help with their credit, please feel free to reach out. 617-459-0041, TAYLAANDRE @gmail.com.